Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about the 1984 film, The Philadelphia Experiment. You can see it looks like the old VHS cover right there. This film was directed by Stuart Rafel. It starred Michael Peri, Nancy Allen, Stephen Tobolowsky's in here. Always happy to see him. Bobby DeSico, and those are most of the main characters in the cast. This was initially a John Carpenter project. Carpenter had written the script in the early 1980s, and for whatever reason, I think someone else bought the script and it was redeveloped. And I know I read in the pre-production it did go through several drafts, although Carpenter did come back to the project and served as executive producer on the film, but despite all the script revisions, the movie feels pretty tight to me, and for the most part. But so yeah, just talk a little bit of what the film's about. So, and I should get into. It's based on one of the more famous legends that came out of the Second World War. There was the Philadelphia Experiment. Allegedly, there was a ship, a naval experiment involving teleportation, and the story is that a ship was in the Philadelphia shipyard and that it was teleported to Virginia, and that there were many injuries in this experiment and just many extravagant claims around this. Now, if you do a little bit of research and digging on this, you can see that no one's provided any evidence of this. A lot of it was taken from the story of one person, and there's just a lot of inconsistencies with the story, with the timeline, and everything like that. But the story did gain traction through the years as one of the more famous conspiracies to come out of World War II. I mean, the Manhattan Project was going on, developing the atomic bomb. So we know the military was doing a lot of experiments, but of course you're going to have a lot of you know extravagant stories come out of it. So by the 1980s, I guess Carpenter was attuned to this, and a movie was based on what happened, what allegedly happened with the story. So we have the movie starts out in 1943. Michael Peri and Bobby DeSico, they're in the Navy. It's very 1940s. We're at a USO dance with Glenn Miller music playing, and and all that. And next morning, the Navy is going to conduct this experiment with what we're told is like a stealth experiment, so ships can be invisible to radar. And everything goes haywire with this experiment, and the two sailors are sent into the future, into the year 1984. Now they end up in the desert. It turns out they're in Utah, and they have absolutely no idea what's happened or how they got there. And they end up coming upon this small town in the desert. There's a cafe, and they start to put two and two together that they've somehow leaped at a different point in time. Like there's like video arcade games and what's happening on the TV. It's all very strange to them since they've jumped ahead 40 years. They meet up with Nancy Allen, who she's just traveling, and a scuffle breaks out at the cafe, and basically they run off with her, and meanwhile there's this odd weather phenomena happening. There's lightning storms and high winds, so the weather on the planet or in that area of the planet seems to be getting more and more unstable. And the Bobby DeSica character is continuing to have seizures and things like that, and his condition seems to be getting worse. DeSica did a lot of World War II movies. I believe he was in 1941, the Spielberg film, and also The Big Red One, another World War II film. So I guess that was his specialty at the time. So anyway, he eventually disappears, and it's Michael Peri and Nancy Allen, and they end up being on the run from the military, who who are trying to figure out what's going on, and they're after him, and a lot of it is Paris trying to figure out what's going on, and his curiosity about being 40 years into the future. Like there's a line where he says, "Well, what happened with the war?" And she, Nancy Allen says, "You mean the Vietnam War?" So there's dialogue like that where he's trying to figure out what happened. Meanwhile, the military scientists are trying to solve this weather phenomena, and they're able to trace it back to the Philadelphia experiments, which caused a rip in time that needs to be repaired, which leads us to the climax of the movie. So overall, this is a perfectly fine, I think, science fiction movie. It's unique in some ways, and I'll point a few of those things out. But it's well made for the most part. I think it's not overlong. The performances are fine, and it's you know time travel stories are always a lot of fun. Although this is more of a melancholy film with time travel. There is a kind of like a dark undercurrent to this movie that we don't always get with time travel stories at the time. Just some takeaways from this movie. So it's the fact that it's dealing with conspiracy theories is interesting about what the government was doing during World War II. So it really plays into the cultural interest in conspiracies. The TV show In Search of with Leonard Nimoy was popular around this time, and so these ideas were starting to enter more into the mainstream, right? And as we get even further into the 1990s, that would be even more the case when we get into the X-Files, and conspiracy theories would just become part of mainstream culture, and specifically conspiracies around World War II and what happened in the post-war, like Roswell, happened right after the war, and all these things became part of, I guess, of the popular unconscious. So the Philadelphia Experiment is like one of the early movies to explore that idea in some ways, and and I think there's as I said, there's a melancholy tone to it. I think a skepticism or a fear about Cold War technology and secret government experiments and what the military is up to, what they're doing, that had been building up in the culture for a long time, getting to the Vietnam years and everything. But to put the World War II spin on it felt a little bit new in some ways. So that too aspect of it, and and I think just the fact that it kind of puts a different twist on World War II, where if you are in the moment of 1943, where you have no idea how the war is going to go, and then suddenly you're flipped 40 years into the future, and suddenly it's all there. Like there's a line where he says, "Oh, Russia or Germany and Japan are allies now," and Russia is our friend, is our enemy. So just it makes you think about how you're stuck. We're always stuck in the present, and how when you're outside of it, everything seems to go along this inevitable path. And I think all the fun stuff we get with time travel stories, which gets us thinking about the passage of time and things like that. So I liked how the movie did that, and the acting I think is pretty good in the movie. Michael Peri, he was also in another, The Streets of Fire, the Walter Hill film, I think was also '84. So he was doing good genre films at the time, and so Philadelphia Experiment, kind of a fun sci-fi movie that is playing off of mythology of World War II, and all the conspiracy culture that gained through the post-war years, and by the 1980s was really becoming part of mainstream discourse and everything like that. So Philadelphia Experiment. I'd recommend the film. If you like time travel films, it's worth checking out at the very least. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the Philadelphia Experiment. And I do have a playlist on all the films I'm talking about from the 1980s, so you can consult those and look at some of my past reviews. I've also done the 1970s, and I still have a few more to cover for 1984. So there'll be more to come. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye.